Okay, let's get it going for another edition of Ask Mike. Our first question comes from Piglet, who says, I am losing faith in our coaching staff, but I really do not want to go through another change other than recruiting. Can you point out some things you suggest that might suggest that they're turning the program around? I don't know. The receivers are better. The running backs are fine. The O-line is even slightly improved. The problem is youth on defense, especially in the secondary, and mainly a total failure to establish and develop a quarterback. Some progress has been made, but not enough to make me optimistic at this point. I call that play Brother Ask. After 2 years, why do I not see even attempts to run the offense Coach Chad Morris is said to have installed at Clemson? Apparently because they've had to dumb it down to keep the quarterbacks, receivers, and tight ends from being confused. Also, it takes so long to get everybody set, especially when Ben Hicks is the quarterback. There's no pace to the offense. So instead of left lane hammer down, it's sort of moving ahead slowly in first gear. Hob Hogs, I want to say Hog Hog, it's Hob Hog, wants to know, can you clarify the transfer portal other than graduates who can transfer with immediate eligibility? How is anything different for undergraduates other than going on a wish to transfer list? They still have to sit out a year, correct? Yes, that's correct. The main difference with the transfer portal is that your name goes into a database, so it's easier for coaches to see who is available for transfer. It's streamlined the process. Also, the NCAA seems to be allowing more waivers these days, so fewer players are having to sit out. BHOG05 asked, do you think Chad has lost the team with the recent transfers? Do you expect more transfer requests if and when we get blown out these next two games? He means Auburn and Alabama. Well, they did lose another commitment over the weekend, but the transfer situation seems to have calmed down. Now, from what I'm hearing, future transfers are more likely at the end of the season if November doesn't go well. Random Pig in Louisiana is curious. Do you think it's a good idea to at least try one of the young quarterbacks? With the way the season is going, I don't see it hurting anything. Ben Hicks is the only quarterback on scholarship who cannot help you next year. So I would start Starkle the rest of the season no matter what and try to develop him in this offense. Also, John Stephen Jones should play some this week at Alabama. He's already redshirted. This nonsense about don't put him in against a team like Bama or LSU, he might lose his confidence. It makes me laugh. Rookies make mistakes. They sometimes look dumb. If that shatters their confidence, they are too fragile to play college football anyway. KJ Jefferson needs to play in at least the last 4 games. It makes no sense to keep him on the shelf. He might have to be your starter at some point next year. Start getting him ready now. Okay, Gruber Griegschwein says, we're about to run a gauntlet consisting of the top 2 rated defenses, offenses in the conference in Auburn and Alabama. It's probably a given that our roster won't be as healthy heading into the Mississippi State game. How do you see that playing out for the following week against Western Kentucky? I've always believed that it's a myth that a team is more likely to suffer injuries against better teams, even more physical teams. Now, at this point, it doesn't look like there were any serious injuries against Auburn. The most serious injury in the Alabama-Tennessee game, for instance, was to Alabama's quarterback, not anybody from Tennessee. So there's no reason to believe that Arkansas will be beat up for the Western Kentucky game. It could happen, but to me, injuries are random. You could end up playing a team with 0 wins, and you might lose your best player to an injury. Tusk wants to know, has Coach Chad Morris's wife ever attended a Razorback game in Fayetteville? I'm told she's been to most of the games. Not sure about the road games, but in the Fayetteville games, she's usually seen sitting with the recruits. Jim Harris asked, Mike, was there a scuffle between assistant coaches on Saturday night at Lexington, and who won? From what I've been told, it was an argument rather than a scuffle. Apparently, one assistant coach said something to the players coached by another assistant, and that assistant took exception and basically said, hey, coach your own players. Leave my guys alone. They are my responsibility. Probably said it a little differently from that, but that's basically what I'm told happened. And as far as I know, that was the end of it. Big Daddy Kane wants to know if we are going to fire a basketball coach who never had a losing record. How long do we give a football coach to show improvement or get us to a winning record? Well, Mike Anderson had 8 years, and he was hired to make Arkansas consistently relevant in the NCAA basketball tournament, and that didn't happen. Morris was hired to rebuild the program. Now, a rebuild usually takes more than 2 years, but not always. Now, my answer on Morris's future is the same as it was last week. I don't know how long he has. I keep hearing that paying his buyout is an issue. If I were an AD, I would never fire a coach unless I was almost certain I could get a big upgrade. Now, I don't know who Hunter Yurachek has in mind if he makes that move, but hopefully, like Frank Broyles before him, he already has somebody else in mind, somebody that could come in and really take the program to another level. Don't take a chance on a guy who might just be a little bit better than the one you have. Kevin says, who is the person or people that got totally hosed on the contract negotiations with Morris? That huge of a buyout with his resume? Were they drunk during the negotiations? You know, I keep getting asked this, and I don't mind answering it because it's a good question. Acting Athletic Director Julia Peoples did it with the approval of the Board of Trustees. Now, I can only assume that the big buyout was done out of ignorance. Those people had not negotiated contracts before, and apparently they thought that's just what you do. Now, the current AD was not involved in the search. Morris was already pretty much hired when Hunter Yurachek came on as AD. To me, that whole thing was a mess, and you can blame it on Gus Malzahn-loving boosters who were salivating at the idea that they could get Gus as head coach. Can Arkansas boosters get over this Gus love? Seriously, do they love Nick Saban? Ed Ogeron was once at Arkansas. Do they love him? Get over it. Kodiak Island is worried about me. He asked, Mike, how are you doing? Is the thought of covering this team making you think how nice retirement might be? No way. To me, retirement is a boring thought. I like my job. I like the people I work for. Football will be back. Somebody will get it going, I promise you. Okay, time for a couple of basketball questions. Roadhog82 wants to know, what are your thoughts on the UALR exhibition game? What do you think will constitute a successful season for Coach Muss in his first year? Well, I think they looked really good at the start of the game and early in the second half. They seemed to get careless both times they had a big lead. Little Rock's probably improved from a year ago. Certainly they were motivated for obvious reasons, and at times they played with more effort than Arkansas. Now, the inside game is going to be a challenge for this team. Scoring and rebounding needs to improve a lot. You can't just be a three-point shooting team, not in the SEC. There were times when the half-court motion offense worked and they got some inside buckets and short jumpers, but it wasn't consistent enough. Reggie Chaney struggled. He got into foul trouble. He's their only real inside player, kind of a true big man, and he's not all that big. He can and will play better, so there's that to look forward to. I could see these guys winning anywhere from 15 to 18 games, but who knows? We're talking about one exhibition game at this point. But I do believe it's going to take some solid recruiting to get this program in the top 25, and that might happen sooner than later. G. Marv asked, what are your thoughts on why the NCAA takes so long to give a yes or no answer on the eligibility of a player like Connor Vanover? You know, I've been trying to figure the NCAA out for 45 years. Not much of anything those people do makes any sense to me. I don't think anybody with a brain would want to go on trial with decision makers like that on your jury. You might go to trial for tax evasion and end up convicted of murder. Big zero for the NCAA. That's it for this week. We'll be talking about the Bama game next Monday on Ask Mike.